Mine is the only voice.
Wow.
What have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey guys, welcome back to Cults to Consciousness. My name is Timmydidwhatpodcast, your host for today. We have two other hosts joining us in studio. We are talking about Tim Ballard. So of course, I was bringing on the very famous Carah, thenuancehoe, and Kyle Fisher. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, thank you for giving us the idea to talk about this. You guys have been covering this nonstop for 2 years, and you have some new information for all of us. So that is why we are here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Elise.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so you guys just released a video a couple days ago going over the breaking news with Tim Ballard. For people who aren't familiar or who haven't seen all of our videos up to this point, because there have been many long videos. I mean, this stuff goes so deep, but for right now, just give everyone who isn't familiar just the nutshell version of who is Tim Ballard and why should we care about him?
Ryan, can you take us through that? Ryan used to work with Tim very closely and did all kinds of Book of Mormon evidence tours with him. Ryan has testified against Tim Ballard in court in Columbia even. So Ryan knows the ins and outs. Take it away.
Sure. Tim is a former Department of Homeland Security special agent that left the government to start his own anti-trafficking organization called OUR, or Operation Underground Railroad, back in 2013. I was a part of that, helped him get it off the ground. And he gained a following really quickly because he gained the endorsement of a senior Mormon apostle, M. Russell Ballard, that really propelled his career into a very well-known, at least in Utah, very well-known nonprofit. And he coupled that with religious endeavors that he was into, like writing books about American history, revisionist history that wrote Mormon theology into the narrative of American history. That took off on its own. It blended theological arguments and Mormon doctrine with American history. And so everybody that was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints took notice. He became very popular. That ultimately led to multiple documentary series about him and his work, culminating into the Sound of Freedom movie that grossed, I think, $200 or $300 million at the box office. 10 plus million people saw it. He became not a household name, but very well known for that. However, behind the scenes, the story and the rise of this guy turned out to be something that was built on fraud, lies, sexual assault of his partners that he worked with, alleged sexual assault, as well as, I guess, a prophet complex or a Messiah complex that was deeply rooted in everything that he did. And so what we're doing is we're watching a cult leader or a modern prophet rise through the ranks of cult leaders to somebody in prominence that has a national audience, and trying to dissect how he got here and why he's still in power, and how he's even growing in notoriety as a result of all these endeavors.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well said. Carah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the reason that I reached out to you after we just put out a really in-depth video on our channel last week that we spent a couple of weeks working on after Tim came out on this one woman named Julie Green's podcast, who goes by Julie Green Ministries. She's her own kind of prophetess, and he went on her show and was speaking to more of a MAGA Christian audience lately. And it's kind of an interesting turning point now that I predicted would happen, where he's now kind of taking his cult-like followers to a different audience and seeing who he can still persuade with his lies and his fraudulent actions. And one of the reasons why, after we put that video out, I was like, I want to talk to Shalise at Cults to Consciousness, not only because we always like to talk about Tim Ballard, but this is, like Ryan said, very much the making of a cult leader right here before our eyes. And Tim is having innovations within Mormonism. So Mormonism is not just, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints headed up in Salt Lake City. There are branches, there are people with their own ideologies and theologies, and he's innovating on Mormonism and making himself the main character now. And he's not just like leaving Mormonism to go become like a Catholic or an evangelical Christian. He's making Mormonism his own and making himself the main character. And I think that is one of the funnest, biggest ironies of speaking to MAGA Christians and embracing Tim Ballard into their fold now. It's people who hate Joseph Smith and think that he's a cult leader, but they love guys like Tim Ballard who act just like Joseph Smith.
Yeah, I think the irony is strong there. And one of the moments that caught my attention the most is when we did a whole video about how he basically had these dreams about how he was going to become the next LDS prophet, not the next, because you have to rise up in the ranks, but he was going to become the prophet of the LDS Church one day. And then within like a week, the church was like, no, you're excommunicated. And then that kind of threw him for a loop. And he was like, wait, hold on, wait, guys. And so ever since then, he's been trying to get that redacted to no avail. They're like, no, thank you. You can't be a part of this. But then in the same breath, he's like, well, the church is full of Satanist abusers anyway. And I couldn't do myself the disservice of being rebaptized. But then in the same breath saying, but Mormonism is the true church. They're just the fallen ones, which sounds very similar to so many breakoffs that we've heard of, even the Lafferty brothers, which is why it's so scary, because you have people going, no, I'm the one mighty and strong. The church is fallen. We have to rebuild it in its true sense. And because he already has such a huge following, that's where it can get really scary. Like you guys have both said, the making of a cult leader. So let's dive into some of those claims from his own mouth. I know you have clips, Carah, and also give the audience an idea of what we're going to cover today.
Yep. Thanks. Okay. Jonathan, would you mind putting that one on screen? Thanks. So was Tim Ballard excommunicated? That's what he has denied that he has been to his audience for the last 2 years. And he's going to explain that he actually was and what that process was like and kind of give us a behind the scenes look at what happened and why it was so wrong that he was excommunicated, and that like a picture of Jesus fell off the wall in the meeting. And like, Jesus was like, I'm out of here if Tim Ballard's out of here too. And then discussing why does he accuse his own church of being infiltrated by satanic abusers? And how does he still claim, though, that the church is truer than ever? It's Ryan has done a great job at breaking down the inner workings of his theology and Mormon theology of how he makes those two contradictions coexist. And some people are still buying it. And then who does he think is behind his downfall? What kind of deep state actions are the reason that he was excommunicated? Because, of course, it had nothing to do with him being kicked out of his own organization, had nothing to do with his alleged victim speaking up, has nothing to do with that. So it's going to be a fascinating episode. Thanks for joining us, everyone. So we can get into it right now. I'm going to go ahead and
do it.
Roll
And
the first
real quick,
clip.
Carah, before you do that, I'm just going to make an announcement to everyone who's watching live. Thank you for joining us. If you have questions along the way, leave those in the chat. Jonathan will be starring those and we'll bring them up. We'll kind of pause our discussion, answer a few questions, and then get back to it. So don't be shy on dropping those comments in the live chat. Okay, go ahead, Carah.
Yep. Thanks for being here, guys. We love doing a live stream. It's going to be hopefully not very messy. Okay. So this is Tim Ballard on the craziest podcast rabbit hole. I watched 1 million of this woman's videos last night. She calls herself a prophetess. She does daily live streams of revelations that she's getting. Tim Ballard says, I only watch your show, Julie. You have the real prophetic word. So he's speaking to a big MAGA Christian audience. And this is what he's saying. If I knew how to click it, click and go and go.
Can I click it? No,
I don't know how to make this work. There we go. Nope.
Wasn't it working a second ago?
Yeah.
Here, while you're figuring that out, I can add some context to this video. Tim has increasingly moved towards more and more extreme Christian Mormon ideology throughout the last 10, 15 years. And And so he's been trying to find people that will give him a platform to explain his extreme ideology. And that platform or that group of people used to be very large. It used to actually be the Mormon Church. He was the #1 author in the Mormon Church owned Deseret book. I think he did $4 million of sales in his books alone. And so he had that platform, he had that audience, and then the church denounced him. He came out with increasingly more extremist views about everything. And as that has progressed, his audience, and I guess the people that were willing to platform his message, I was one of the first ones back in 2013, has shrank more and more and more. And the only ones that are willing to give him a platform now are people like Julie Green or Troy Abel's Last Dispensations, who have this extreme apocalyptic view of the events of the last days, as they put it, that are going to usher in the second coming of Jesus Christ. And so I would have thought that, a year ago, after being denounced and everything, he would have nobody on his side. But in fact, he's just rebranded himself to a more extreme position and has become a favorite among these extremist Christian apocalyptic doomsday prophetess or prophets that gravitate towards that kind of message. And so his audience is becoming more hardened, more extreme, more dangerous, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it's gotten smaller, but he still has an audience. He still has a lot of followers out there. And like you said, Charlize, we're watching the break off of a splinter group right here. Just like, in early Mormon history, when there's succession crisis, there's multiple splinter groups. From Sidney Rigdon was a leader that broke off. There's a break off by James Strang that went to Beaver Island in Michigan that took some Mormons there. Then there was the fundamentalist splinter groups that are all over Utah and in the western part of the United States that believe in polygamy. And so all these fractures and splinters continue to happen. And we're watching one of these splinters like develop right before our very eyes. So it's a really interesting case study to see how this happens.
Yeah.
You got the YouTube figure out the clip?
Yeah, I had to change tabs and figure it out. I just to go along with Ryan said, I found this photo last night. This is the profile picture of one of the speakers from the last Rod Meldrum Firm Foundation Book of Mormon Evidence Conference. So if we're talking about apocalyptic beliefs, a lot of the people who still believe in Tim Ballard, in the comment section when I was looking up, who still believes in Tim Ballard, people were saying, oh, I really like this one woman's speeches. I went and found her speeches, and this is her profile picture. This is a picture of Donald Trump holding babies, running away from like some deep state through the water. I had to see it, so I wanted your audience to see it too. Okay, I can switch to the other. That's the kind of apocalyptic beliefs. This is where we're at. Okay, so all right, back to Tim on Julie Green show.
And that people that call themselves Christians and represent Jesus Christ could possibly involve themselves in such pharisaical activity. They destroyed my life, and they knew it. They intended to. I lost everything. I lost my job. I had a Simon & Schuster book deal. Lost that. Lost Sound of Freedom too. I was on the outs with everybody, because if the Mormon Church would denounce you, it must be true. Well, it's the ultimate backfire, because Jesus, ironically, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints didn't count on Jesus. I wonder often if they prayed before or during this whole thing and said, Jesus, please help us to outsmart you and lie better so that we can not let you uncover the worst thing happening on the planet. You should have on your show a guy named Jason Preston, also a member of the church. I'm sure they're going to excommunicate him soon. Well, they probably won't, because I'm being loud now. But they excommunicated me, which basically is them saying, you don't go to heaven, basically telling my wife, while violating every...
So there's Tim admitting that he was excommunicated. This is the first time that I know of publicly that he has admitted that he was excommunicated. Just saying.
Scripture and policy. I didn't get a hearing. I didn't get any kind of counsel. I had a witness outside. I knew enough to know that he could bail me out of this. No, he can't come in. It was the most cruel, unusual, ridiculous backfire. It's a backfire because they didn't count on my wife, who knows Jesus more than anyone I know, and they didn't count on Jesus himself. And so it's all, I can start talking because it's all coming out really soon. It's massive. It's not just the church. It goes far and wide. But the church, you'll see the allegations about satanic ritual abuse that's been going on in Utah for probably decades. Jason Preston of We Are the People podcast, you need to talk to him. He's the expert on it. They knew I was looking into it because I told them. I was naively thinking they would want me to clean out satanic ritual abuse of children that's connected to people in the church. But no, we must be Pharisees. First and foremost, we whitewash the.
So there you have it. You can put us full screen for a second. That's Tim coming out. And what's fascinating is this is kind of the exact thing that so many evangelical Christians want to hear from Tim Ballard, is it not? That the Mormons were behind satanic child ritual abuse this whole time. So it's just this interesting pivot in his messaging from knowing that he has done all this work for the LDS Church, that's where his base is, to trying to get reinstated into the church. We're going to talk more about and show clips of him talking about trying to appeal his excommunication. But since it likely came from the prophet, came from the top, he's not getting back in. And so now his message is pivoting, and it's harsh, and it's playing to a totally different audience that's willing to eat it up.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is now he's coming out and saying there's satanic ritual abuse. Meanwhile, his entire platform that is being bolstered by the church is saying we're saving children from abuse. And so you would think if he knew about it the whole time, wouldn't he shift or like try to actually make a difference there? But no, he's benefiting from the church in their name. And so he's going to ignore it and now come out with it. Do you have any insight on that, Ryan, as far as did you ever hear him talk about satanic things within the church when you were there?
Yeah, that is a great point that I hope his followers hear, because I worked closely with him for 6 years, and never once did he mention that he was aware of or had a problem with satanic ritual abuse inside the Mormon church. Not a single time. And what he referred to in that video is this YouTube series that has come out that interviews victims of sexual satanic ritual abuse, something along those lines. And really what I think is happening is, honestly, he just got his reinstatement to the church denied twice now. And so he is coming out. He's like, the church is never going to reaccept me. They're going to obviously stand by their denouncement of him. So he saw a YouTube video of satanic ritual abuse and survivors, which is a real thing. It's out there. There are people that are coming forward. That are survivors, whether it's institutionalized, like a policy or an institutionalized, or is it just really creepy people that have access to kids that happen to be operating inside the Mormon church, just like they would in any other religion. I don't know the specifics of that, and so I can't comment to the validity of that, but I really think he just watched some YouTube videos, saw that there's a lot of people gravitating towards this new movement or this new claims, and he's trying to hijack that audience just like he hijacks every other audience that he can possibly get access to. So yeah, you made a great point. He's never mentioned that throughout the 6 years I worked closely with him. And he's also kind of admitting by his own words that he was aware of this going on for the last 10 years, possibly, definitely the last couple of years, and he remained silent. So yeah, you have a guy that is both trying to expose the Mormon church, which he was a part of and had access to the apostles, yet he's acknowledging that for the last 10 plus years, he never publicly outed the sexual abuse of children in this way. So he's also saying he was part of the cover up for a long time. And I don't know how you get around that one.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that from what we know that he still believes that the church is true somehow. And so I wonder if he believes it's true so much that he can't possibly imagine the true church wouldn't allow him in it because he thinks that he's the next Messiah or whatever, or the next prophet. And so that's his way of doing these mental gymnastics of, well, clearly they're just fallen because why would they not want me in there? Because I'm the guy that's going to change the world. And so I feel like that's just his pivot of, well, there's just Satanists in there. That's why. That's what's going on.
Yeah. There's an interesting theology that I would have not thought of in a million years, but when you can cherry pick scriptures when you're a cult leader and you're like, and this proves I'm good, and this proves I'm good, and from God said this, and from his house it shall go forth. Like, oh, this means that the time of the Gentiles is ending, and this means so. Tim has all these different scripture references that he perfectly places in these slots to say that that he's basically writing himself into the scriptures. That like this is the time of the Gentiles ending, and the LDS Church, it ain't what it used to be. And me, Tim Ballard, I'm the proof of that. That if I'm not in the church, that's how we know that the time of the Gentiles is over and Christ's reign is coming back. The gathering of Israel is happening. So
yeah. Well, also to Tim's credit, the church isn't what it used to be. If we look at what it was initially and what it was meant to be, it's drastically changed for the better, of course. But that's where you get a lot of those extreme breakoffs and the ones who are trying to follow the fundamentals, which is why it's the FLDS, the fundamentalist churches that are like, no, we need to go back to the original. And that's when it gets really dangerous. So that's why it's scary. And that's why we're talking about it. Before we move on, we have 2 questions here in the chat. Laura says, I like that Tim seems to try and help people. What are your thoughts on that, guys? I'm gathering people think he's false. I don't know. You guys have done the deep dives, so you talk about it.
Yeah, the short version of that is Tim latches on to crusades that people can absolutely get behind, saving kids from trafficking. Who's not in support of that? But what he's shown from a pattern of behavior is that it's all for self-aggrandizing, monetary purposes, as well as fame and money. And that's what I saw personally as I got to know him throughout the years. And that's what's also become apparent in all these court documents that have been released in these multiple lawsuits that pull the curtain behind the wizard and show us how he actually operates. And so what you see is a man that's trying to profit off of desperate situations, tragic situations, which is why when the drug war became a popular talking point and Trump gets into office and starts talking about a border wall, he jumps on board with, we need a border wall to stop human trafficking, and I'm the guy to help do that. And that talking point got him all the way into meetings with the White House. And so he became part of that crusade because it was popular and people wanted to get behind it. And then he turned around and used that crusade to raise money for his own foundation. When the Ukraine war broke out, who shows up in Ukraine immediately? Tim Ballard is there to save kids. And then he shoots some video, goes on a fundraising tour to say, we need your help to save these kids that are suffering, shows them shocking videos. He's done that with all of his documentary projects, Operation Toussaint, Operation Triple Take in Colombia. He shoots video of himself of these tragic situations where people are being exploited, and then asks for money to give to him so that he can stop the exploitation. But when in fact he's really exploiting the situation for his own gains. And now the latest one is the situation in Syria with a Druze population in southern Syria that is being isolated and attacked. And there's some Christians in there also. They're Jewish, the Druze are. Who shows up in that situation? Tim Ballard. He just shot a promo video about how he's going to rescue and save the Druze from the evil Islamic militants that are attacking them. And he gets that footage, goes on his fundraising tour and puts that out there and is trying to raise money for a new foundation. So is Tim bad? Is he involved in things that are good? Yes, he's involved in things that are trying to do good in the world, but it's in an exploitative manner. And because it is exploitative, he is not actually helping the people in the majority of cases that actually need help. And a lot of that money is going to his own pocket, to his for-profit businesses, and for other fame-seeking things like running for political office and things like that. So that's how I'd answer that question.
Well said. And can you also speak to, Ryan, I know we were talking about in previous videos how by going to these certain areas and putting on these couple ruses to try and catch these predators, these child predators, he was actually creating a market for these children to be trafficked to him because he didn't have actual evidence of trafficking. He was just going to hopefully catch somebody.
Yeah, exactly. He would run these sting operations where he and a bunch of other operatives that many of them I've known and talked to personally about a lot of their operations. They would go into Cartagena, Colombia, or Cozumel or something, and act as tourists, going around saying, "Hey, you have any kids that you could bring us? We have lots of money." And that message gets spread throughout the community. And so then people that are in desperate situations that have desperately need money would participate in this sting operation by, in one case, there was a kid that brought his girlfriend, and they made a deal like, hey, if you go with these American tourists and do some sex stuff, they'll give us thousands of dollars, money that we could never earn in multiple years of work. And she reluctantly agreed to participate in that. Another case that I spoke to an operator about is there's a mother who was in a desperate situation who agreed to bring her kid to them, to Tim or one of his operatives. And the guy that was involved in this conversation, he said that he told me that the mother, agreed to do that, and it was filmed that she agreed to do that, and so then she was charged with trafficking and went to jail. And the operator that was involved in that told me that he had to go through 6 years of therapy to deal with the PTSD from his involvement in putting what was probably an innocent mother in jail. That was just somebody that was in a desperate situation in a third world country that couldn't provide food for her family. And she thought, well, if I give my baby up for one night to these creepy Americans, then I could, solve all of our financial problems in one go, and made the horrible decision to agree to something. And so Tim's tactics have taken advantage and exploited desperate people in third world countries in desperate situations. And OUR has since stopped all those tactics. Those kind of tactics were completely denounced by actual credible nonprofits that were doing real human trafficking, anti-human trafficking work. And so those don't exist anymore because of these ethical compromises that have to be made to actually try and find bad guys. But in a lot of cases that I've, not probably all of them, but in a lot of cases, people that weren't involved into trafficking, Tim's operations, OUR's operations, brought them into this market that he created out of thin air. Some operators said that we walked the beaches for 3 or 4 days and could not find anybody that would give us access to kids. It just shows that there wasn't a market there until Tim shows up, and then starts throwing money around, waving in front of people's faces, and did a lot of damage in the process, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah, and just to add to that, listening more to Tim talk to this woman who calls herself a prophetess, Julie Green, and the circles that he's involved in, it's spiritual warfare. It's like theologically based first and foremost. That it's a battle between good and evil, between the deep state and the radical leftists and godless atheists. And it's kind of like this extremely us versus them cultish worldview that makes people frightened and scared and open up their pocketbooks. And so he kind of starts everything from the most frightening theological kind of basis with his work, and then tries to fill in the gaps with going out and finding that horrors in the world. And sometimes that stuff absolutely exists, but the ways in which Tim Ballard does it is not anywhere respected by experts in human trafficking. So does that make sense? So like his basis is extremely cultish and theological.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll go to a city and assume the sex trafficking is there, then it's just not. And but he'll bring the camera crew anyway and edit together a story that makes it look like he is the hero in it.
Okay, let's keep going, Carah, with what you have, because I know we do have a lot to get through. Thank you for that question and comment that got us through. I do think that was important to mention.
Yeah.
The perceived good versus the actual good, and the issues that he's causing to put himself up on a pedestal for what we're seeing now. So go ahead, Carah.
Okay. Yeah. And so if you can imagine, a couple of weeks ago, Tim Ballard speaks out on this MAGA Christians podcast and says these very inflammatory things about the Mormon church being infiltrated. And what are people left to believe? And the comment section from that has a lot of people saying, I predicted Tim Ballard would turn on the Mormon church when they found him out. And a lot of Christians who were like, absolutely, this means he's lost his faith in the Mormon church. And Tim kind of had to do damage control after that. So if anyone is interested to read the comments later, you're welcome to. It's, people are like praising Jesus, that Tim Ballard's found the real true God, and he's abandoning his belief in the Book of Mormon and in Joseph Smith. But Tim's like, on the contrary. So this is him going on this pro LDS podcast to kind of set the record straight on his theological basis for things. So we'll play this and discuss.
Latter-day Saints has now removed.
Okay, so this is the clip. This is the clip of Tim right after he was denounced by the LDS Church. We're gonna go back to the timeline of September 2023, and just to kind of set the timeline straight for people, so you kind of get a grasp of why he's so upset, because the LDS Church puts out this very public denouncement in Vice News about his conduct being morally unethical, and Tim acts like he was completely surprised and had no idea, him and his wife had no idea that the church was going to denounce him like this. And this just kind of lays out what happened at that time, and then we can jump back in.
Articles promoting Tim Ballard and the nonprofit he founded, Operation Underground Railroad. The articles were removed on the same day the church released a statement citing betrayal and condemning Ballard for morally unacceptable behavior. The statement was in response to documents obtained by Vice News detailing a criminal investigation into Ballard, in which he reportedly called himself the Mormon Messiah and spoke with a psychic to communicate with the prophet Nephi for intel on how to rescue children. Yesterday, Ballard said he does not believe the church truly condemned him, questioning whether the church's statement was indeed legitimate. Before it was taken down, one of the church articles linked to the nonprofit's website and included quotes from Ballard about doing the Lord's work. The church's statement says it has never endorsed, supported, or represented OUR, Tim Ballard, or any projects associated with.
Okay. So that kind of sets the scene for what we're going into next. So this is Tim Ballard explaining how he can't believe that this statement came from the prophet. So keep in mind, in the course of this timeline, he thinks that somebody behind the scenes is orchestrating something to take him down. He forgets that he was, before the September 23 denouncement from the church, Tim was already removed from Operation Underground Railroad. There were already multiple allegations of sexual misconduct and spiritual abuse, coercion, and he had tons of legal, scrutiny that was already mounting. But Tim Ballard attributes the church's statement not to any of these things, but instead directs the blame to people within the church, within some kind of deep state within the church, like the church PR spokesman, Doug Anderson. So this is Tim claiming that he can't believe it came from the prophet himself. And one of the ways that I do believe that it came from the prophet, Ryan, after this clip, why don't you go ahead and explain your knowledge of that situation, but we'll watch this first.
So a confusing message. And then to make matters worse, the stake president said this came from President Nelson. So really, President Nelson defamed me, Elder Ballard, and sent it to a tabloid? Are you sure you want to stand by that story? And I welcome the stake president to come on and say it out loud. He said it to me. He said it to others. The prophet wrote this statement. The prophet didn't write the statement. I can't believe he falsely used President Nelson's name, attached it to a statement, and said it's from him. I guess you're judging Israel. You can do whatever you want. You can invoke anyone, and you already invoked Jesus. So now I guess you can invoke his prophet too. And that's what he decided to do.
So I know for a fact that President Nelson did not do what the stake president claimed he did. In fact, I know the entire process.
So he has his idea of the entire process. But Ryan, what's your firsthand account of what we know about his excommunication and what really went down? Because there's a couple things going on, just so everyone's understanding there's the denouncement paper, that came out to Vice News, and then there's also his excommunication, neither of which Tim thinks came from anything but the deep state. But go ahead, Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he blames the PR person going rogue, a guy named Doug Anderson, who went rogue to try and take him out for political reasons and things like that. But I actually have a mutual friend with somebody in the PR department who I talked with at that time, who confirmed that, yeah, it came from the very top. Obviously it did, because that PR person has been there for 15 years. They still have their job. They can speak on behalf of the church. But the excommunication, I mean, he tries to deflect blame into it was like some sort of political hit job because he was going to take Mitt Romney's seat and run for the Senate in Utah, or that it was because he was going to expose the deep state in the church that was doing satanic ritual abuse, or it was just because the watchmen on the tower that were overlooking the vineyard of the world, as prophesied in the Bible, fell asleep at their post and are attacking the true servant, which is him. I mean, he's got a lot of explanations for why that happened. However, but the truth, I believe, lies in a couple different events that happened. One was his own organization, Operation Underground Railroad, was internally accused Tim was internally accused within the organization of sexual assault, not by the 5 women that have come forward publicly, but by others. And that investigation was handled internally and was settled with those women, which included a gag order to where they were not allowed to talk publicly about it. The result of that investigation...
I want to quote real quick. The internal investigation from OUR, quote, said, found unprofessional behavior that violated OUR's policy and values. That is his own organization he founded, said that also to Vice News. Continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that report resulted in the termination of Tim Ballard from the organization that he founded. Okay, so there's sexual assault allegations at that time, right before the church denounced him. However, there's 2 other things, like Tim explains that in his excommunication or disciplinary council that he was accused of having sex with somebody other than his wife. Now, that has been alleged in these lawsuits that he sexually assaulted multiple women. However, I don't believe for 1 second that a woman in his state coming forward with sexual assault allegations would cause him to be immediately excommunicated. Deseret Book's #1 author has the support and endorsement of the church and Elder Ballard. And one woman comes forward, or a couple of women come forward, say that he took advantage, and then he's immediately excommunicated. So far, I have not seen the LDS Church take sexual assault allegations that seriously, and I doubt that they've changed course. So what is happening? Well, a couple of things. One is I believe that OUR and the church have been working closely together since their founding. OUR was founded with church support. Elder Ballard not only gave tithing records of wealthy members of the church to Tim and OUR for their own fundraising efforts, but he personally called people like the Sorensen family, a wealthy billionaire family in Utah. He personally called the ClickFunnels founder, Russell Brunson, who went on social media at one point and said, Elder Ballard called me personally and told me to help start this organization and donate money to it. So Elder Ballard was fundraising for OUR and got it off the ground. He also helped organize the board by asking for the board members from Steve Young's foundation to come over and help start this one. I mean, he was very, very involved in all the details of all this. So OUR and the church are in this together, and they have to do damage control. So of course, OUR would be sharing the internal investigation findings with the church. But the other thing that that comes up in all of this, and is that Tim at this time was also claiming privately, it hadn't been made public yet, that he was destined to become prophet of the Mormon Church. He was going to take over the Mormon Church. He was prophesied through these psychic readings, these kind of patriarchal blessings by these other psychics that he surrounded himself with. And I'm sure he believed it. I mean, he has not to this day denounced that is not the case. So if you want to get the attention of the leaderships of the church, I don't think sexual misconduct is really what gets you kicked out. I don't even think like fraud is what gets you kicked out. Using an apostle's name to raise money, that is a problem. But also, you add on top of that, he was gunning for the leadership of the church. Yeah, there's a perfect storm of reasons why the LDS Church had to get rid of this guy, had to at least excommunicate him at the very least. And so they did so. That's my take on it anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of that is that he's like, the idea that a lot of people in the LDS comment section under Troy Abel's video are like, okay, maybe what happened is that he broke his covenants, maybe he sinned, and now he's taking it out on the church. Tim just kind of needs to go quietly away. But the bigger picture is that of organizations like this is not just like he sinned or broke his covenants. He was cut off because everyone saw him do it. And there is like this comparison that some people will do between like, oh, well, I know somebody who was excommunicated and they appealed it. Like, Tim, you can keep appealing it. But this is the kind of situation where the allegations of, rape and the investigations and everything that's going on would all be able to be swept under the rug if so many media outlets were not covering it all, So you have $100 billion, 300, whatever, $1 billion organization being dragged through the mud who has a PR department, has a reputation management department. They're going to cut off somebody for liability reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I wish kind of LDS members would recognize, that like, this is not just like a miscommunication where somebody broke their covenants. This is a corporation who propped up a leader in their church who brought more people into the covenant, made people in the world look like, Mormonism is awesome. Look at our heroes like Tim Ballard. And when he was no longer advantageous for the corporation, it's really cut and dry. Like they needed him to be distanced from them. So it's pretty cut and dry.
I think what's scary is that the church cannot afford to bring him back into the fold, but that's what's ultimately going to make him go further and further and create his own branch. Like we've been talking about, it would be safer for them to just allow him back in and do whatever he's going to do and just let him be a normal member. But because they're actively pushing him away because they can't afford to with their publicity, it's going to make him more extreme and more radicalized. So let's talk about, Carah, how he is doubling down on his Mormon faith somehow.
Yeah. So I'll skip past this. This is what he wants to say to the LDS Church. He says he demands those in the church administration and PR and media who participated in the coordinated effort to bring down Tim Ballard must publicly retract their reckless statements and acknowledge the devastating damage they inflicted, not only on Tim's family, colleagues, and livelihood, but on the critical work of rescuing trafficked women and children worldwide. So
pushing blame much? He can't even. Oh, it's so aggravating. It's like you can't take accountability for 1 second. You have to put the blame on every single person but yourself. It's just so like, come on. Are we really that blind? Anyway.
Yeah. For a cult leader, the stakes are as high as humanly possible. It's like the blood of children are on everyone's hands who have spoken out against me,
Yeah.
So before this statement came out from the church, Tim is in, good fellowship. He calls the church leaders prophets, seers, and revelators. After these statements, now he's saying, you church leaders who are prophets, seers, and revelators, what are you doing? You have now got blood on your hands. Now you're part of this coordinated effort to be part of satanic trafficking and do some of the worst things in the world. So this is him now attempting to justify his interpretation of all of these events. Okay. So I'm going to go to the theology section right here. And this is his Mormon theology. Pay attention. And Ryan, you can pause me at any time when you want to jump in and explain.
Decision made by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I know deep states are real. I know that the best organizations in the world will be infiltrated. It's prophesied all over the scriptures that it's going to happen. So in beautiful irony, as I watch it happen, I'm like, oh, the prophets were right. The scriptures were right. this is going to happen. And it's important that everybody knows the truth about what's going on. And it's severe. The actions taken by certain people inside this corporation, I'll call it a corporation or an institution, that to me does not represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's very severe what they've done. They involved themselves in a mass conspiracy, potentially civil, possibly criminal. I can't talk much about it. I know more than I can say. Okay. And I'm sorry if anyone got confused thinking that I've lost my testimony of the gospel. It's only increased. First of all, my faith in Jesus Christ is through the roof. And my understanding of his love for all people, like these Druze people. I think sometimes I have been guilty of being a little myopic. Sometimes I think the sun of the house of Israel, rose and set in Salt Lake City. And I've been guilty of that. That's not the truth. This was the restoration remnant, the times of the Gentiles. It was beautiful. It did an amazing job. Okay. And to watch that and have been part of that. But the gathering of Israel, let's be clear, is only a small percentage of that is beautiful young men in white shirts and sisters in dresses teaching the gospel. But look,
all right.
You want me to translate some of that?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So
that word salad, there's a lot there. It could be a whole hour discussion. But what he starts out by saying is that he's coming out saying the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has been infiltrated by satanic ritual abusers of children. But that's okay because it's prophesied that all good things will be infiltrated in the last days. And so that's actually proof that it is the true church. Are you seeing the circular logic here? That's proof that it is the true church, that it was infiltrated by satanic ritual abusers. And so his testimony is even stronger than ever that it's the true church, because if all true things are going to be attacked and infiltrated by Satan. And so that's the circular logic that he has. Whatever happens, he is still the hero of the story. The church is still true, even though it's denouncing him and infiltrated by satanic ritual abusers. I mean, I don't know. I think your viewers are probably astute enough to see that doesn't make sense. But I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I feel like it's just one of those things that current members of cults do. I've never seen anyone who's been kicked out have the same view, but there's a first for everything. I mean, usually when people are in it and something bad happens in the organization, that's when they say, well, we're being persecuted because we're the true church. And of course, things are, Satan's going to do his best work on the one true religion. But I guess I've never seen that happen to someone so deluded when they've already been kicked out and disavowed by that organization. Usually they go, wait a second, something must be off because I'm a pretty good guy. But he's so deluded into even realizing that he's doing good things while he's allegedly assaulting these women and allegedly creating markets for child trafficking. And he just can't see it because in his head, he's the good guy. There's just so many layers to this.
yeah, really trying to save face. That's how I would put it. You are like the cult expert. And I think, yeah, you broke it down perfectly, that he's going to go on to continue to explain how he still wears his garments. He still reads his Book of Mormon every day. He still goes to the temple, even though he calls it like a country club card that he can't get taken away from him. He's like, okay, well, I guess you took away my country club card. I can't go into the temple with my wife, which is really the only thing that I want. So I'll just sit in, he talks about how he sits in the foyer of the temple while his wife goes in to the temple, and he can't go in. So he just reads his scriptures about all the vengeance that he's going to exact on the organization that runs this temple that he's in right now. Like this, it's interesting. So he still says that, this gospel, this church is still the truest church on the face of the planet. This is where where the house of the Lord still resides, right? So it's still the truest organization. Therefore, powerful evil forces have to infiltrate it. Therefore, anyone punished by church leaders actually might be the most righteous people of all, fulfilling prophecy after all. So therefore, to Tim, in his case, his excommunication proves that he is divinely called by God and proves that he works on behalf of Jesus. So
This is
Let
some
that
Lafferty
sit.
Brothers shit right here. If anyone watched Under the Banner of Heaven, it feels a lot like this, where the church is like, you're trying to do what we used to do. We don't do that anymore. You're excommunicated. And he's like, see, I'm the one chosen, mighty and strong, and whatever Book of Mormon scripture that is, you guys probably know, that I'm supposed to lead the true church. It's going right there. It's headed that direction.
Right.
Yeah,
And
but
go ahead, Ryan.
the brilliance of this is that the Mormon crowd has been historically and culturally prepared to accept a message like this, because I mean, you just look at any part of Mormon history. For example, Joseph Smith is killed, their prophet's killed, they're kicked out of Illinois, and they have to go out to the deserts of Mexico outside the United States to establish, that was not part of building Zion out there in the Midwest. And yet that happened, and the followers still fell in line. So the history shows that, well, even though something terrible is happening, the story's going out into left field, it's gone off the rails, you come up with a scriptural explanation like, well, we're just following the same pattern as the Jews that were kicked out of Egypt and going to their promised land. Or you come up with some sort of scriptural precedence for it, and then you write yourself into those prophecies. And Tim is saying in this clip, and as he continues, that it's prophesied in Isaiah that the watchmen on the tower who are looking over the vineyard, i.e. the leaders of the church that has a priesthood, will fall asleep in the last days, and they will persecute the true messengers from God. And so he writes himself into the scriptures that this was all prophesied. And so he can have it both ways. When he's in the church and getting the endorsement of the apostles, this is proof that he is chosen by God. Then the apostles denounce him. Well, because of those Old Testament prophecies, it's proof that he's the real servant of God. And this is how cults start. This is how break-off groups start. This is how cult leaders twist whatever message that the membership already knows to make them look like the true servant of God, the true chosen one. And people follow them like people do. It just happens. Like Lafferty Brothers all over the place. It happens.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Real quick, I feel like I have to make this disclaimer just to add some context and understanding. Having grown up in the LDS Church myself, I feel like the people who are jumping on board with Tim maybe are not the middle of the road, everyday Joe Schmo Mormon who's just going to church and trying to be a good person. It seems like people a little bit more on the fringes. So I guess I wanted to say I don't want everyone watching to think that every Mormon is jumping on the Tim bandwagon, because I don't feel like that's the majority, unless you guys have a different opinion on that.
No, like we said at the beginning, it's people who have like apocalyptic more views, who are definitely the stronger right-leaning demographic, people who believe in conspiracy theories more than your average Mormon would. But like I said, the even Troy Abels, whose clips we're showing, like Tim only has just a couple of podcasts he's able to go on with friends left. On that show, the comment section is still split, maybe like half and half of people who were willing to hear Tim out, and at the end are like, I think his day has come, and now it's the writing's on the wall. So his following is getting smaller and smaller, but more and more they're more and more theologically and doomsday motivated.
Yeah, that makes sense, because even within the mainstream. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add that it is fringe that is still in support of Tim. However, you know who else was a fringe Mormon leader? Brigham Young. He did not have the majority of the church. It was only 30 to 40% of people that actually chose him as leader. So these fringe movements can actually become pretty large, depending on the person and how it goes down. And as we've seen in the case of Tim, he's gone from a nobody to a national superstar in movies in a short 10-year span. And now he's going also after the evangelical Christian crowd trying to gain their support,
Right.
which is even a larger subset of the American population. And so I don't want to underestimate, how this guy can rise in the ranks of American culture and the damage that can be done.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great point. And hopefully, like someone mentioned in the comments I saw pop up on the screen, people with internet access hopefully can do their research and know better. And we can hope that it wouldn't be as extreme as it was back in Brigham Young days when they were basically isolated in the valley. But like you said, we can never underestimate the power of influence, especially if he already has a large following. So let's go to a couple more questions and then we can wrap this up. I don't know how to feel about this, about his wife. Is she a victim that is stuck, or is she a grand enabler? Any context with this, guys?
Free Catherine Ballard. Hashtag free Catherine Ballard. I'm sure that she knows about a lot of things, to be honest. And it's probably a little bit of both. One thing that I do think is worth mentioning that we didn't even think of before, Ryan, is that for Catherine to go into the temple, to have a temple recommend, how does she work out that you have to answer a question? Do you support your local leaders and the church leadership, or do you believe in any organizations that are against the church? That temple question that they ask you. How could she possibly answer that question honestly? How could Tim Ballard's kids possibly answer that question honestly to get a temple recommend, to still be in good standing with the church, to enter the house of the Lord when their dad is now trying to sue the church and is speaking out against the church like this? I do think that is interesting.
That's interesting. That's a great
Yeah,
point.
from my
I don't know. Mental
perspective,
gymnastics.
yeah, as a woman growing up in the church, knowing that my only job was to find a worthy priesthood holder so I could get to the highest level of heaven, she's in a really tough position here because according to Mormon theology, she will not be going to the highest level of heaven if he is not an active temple worthy member. And what's she going to do? Is she going to denounce her faith, even though Tim is saying, no, this is the true church? Maybe you should hang on to your membership. I mean, if she divorces him, that's also really scary for women in the church. There's just so many things at risk for her. And she's probably reeling with, how do I deal with this situation? Because her own salvation hangs in the balance of this.
She probably saw what Tim did when the church denounced him. So if she were to denounce him and break up with him, he would probably also go apeshit on her. So she's probably just, like you said, just trying to stay the quiet, obedient wife and going along with what her husband said. Because as Tim explains in this interview, he's like, I don't need a country club card. Like, Jesus knows that I'm really a true and faithful servant anyway. Like, enough of these middlemen, like God knows what my heart says. Tim also explains, like, I wouldn't even want to be rebaptized because that would solidify and the excommunication, that would look like I did something, right? So in Tim's mind, he's kind of like, those were false judges in Israel. They don't mean anything. This excommunication doesn't mean anything. It came from the deep state. I am still a worthy member of the church in every way, except for the fact that I can't go to the temple or do all these different rituals, and I'm kicked out in these ways. But in his mind, he's still like, still a worthy member.
Okay, that's
they're making it work.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw the clip on your video, which everyone should go watch after this, where they do a deeper dive, if it's even possible, into Tim Ballard. But I was going to ask you, how could he say, I could not possibly be rebaptized when he still thinks it's the true church? And you're saying it's because he thinks all of these processes that the Mormon church has, all of these formalities don't matter because in his heart, he is a true member of the church regardless.
Yeah, basically. But to keep in mind, he did try to appeal it. So I have a clip. We don't have time to play it, but Troy Abel says, don't stop appealing your excommunication, Tim. Keep doing it. And he's like, I appealed it up all of the chambers that I can. Like, and I'm not going to anyway. Like, I did it for a year. And he speaks outside both of sides of his mouth because he's like, I appealed it for a year. And also I've given them 2 years to talk about the satanic ritual abuse, or else I'm going to expose them. And so you wanted to get back in the church, and you were holding on to this lever, this leverage, that if they didn't let you back in the church, you were going to talk about how they have satanic ritual abuse, but you want to be in that church anyway, right? It's very confusing. So he says, like, I appealed it, and I'm not going to appeal it anymore. Because you know what? I don't even want to be in their club anymore, because actually, when I think about it, I don't even need to be a member of their church, because that would like sanctify my excommunication. And I am not even giving them the right to acknowledge that happened. So, right.
Okay. Well, we can go for about 10 or 15 minutes more if you have more that you want to cover, Carah.
Yeah, I have the rest of his theological argument that I hope your audience is as fascinated as I am with the scriptures and the ways that he's working into how this is still the most true church and that he's fulfilling this prophecy and making himself the biggest cult leader of all time. So keep up right here.
That's part of it, but that's not the great gathering when he sets his hand a second time.
Right.
In fact, the scriptures are very clear. He says, when I set my hand a second time to gather Israel, you will know when I'm doing that, when the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Okay, so there comes an end to the current, according to the scriptures, the current system, the current institution. It's never going to go away. It better not. No, it's not. It's going to stay. It might change some of its mission to support the gathering of all people. Read John, read Revelation, read D&C 101, the nobleman in the vineyard. Look what happens. The Lord comes to set his hand a second time in the vineyard, and he calls servants to come in. And we have to be honest with the fact that there's watchmen on the tower that weren't doing their job. Isaiah calls them the drunkards of Ephraim, and there's a problem. It's okay. This shouldn't affect your testimony.
No.
If anything, it should increase your testimony, because the prophecies that are scattered throughout Doctrine and Covenants, Book of Mormon, all the standard works is being fulfilled. Yeah.
So there you have it. It's being fulfilled. It shouldn't affect your testimony. This is just exactly what the gospel already said was going to happen, that there are going to be watchmen on the tower who fall asleep at their post. And it just so happens that the one and only true church of God can just be brought down by mid-level managers named Doug within the PR department. That was a huge whoopsie. However, church still true. It's a very interesting fine line that he walks. I'm endlessly fascinated, because he has to call out the church for being corrupt. That's why he's no longer in it. But he needs the church to be corrupt now to justify his rebellion against it. Still good church, still divine, still justify everyone else's loyalty in it. Make sense?
It almost makes sense enough for you to be like, okay, I can see how Tim makes this make sense. It doesn't make sense, but I can see how he's connecting his imaginary dots to make it so everything can be true at once in his case.
And don't you, as somebody who, audience of Cults to Consciousness, Shalise, how common is this with cult leaders? Like, this is the playbook of a cult leader.
100%. This is their specialty. This is how they get people to do insane things. And then when they leave, everyone goes, how could you fall for that? It's because of these people, these charismatic leaders that can tell you 1 + 2 = 20. And you're like, yes, because doing the math in your head, trying to make it make sense. That is their specialty. That's how they get people to do crazy things. So absolutely, it's very clear that he is on that path of gaining as many followers as he can, although I don't know how successful he can truly be in the evangelical crowd when they see videos like this, because he almost had them, right? When he was denounced by the Mormon Church and he said they're overrun by Satanists, and they're like, okay, Tim, come on over. And now he's saying, no, which I think ruined his PR plan or his PR strategy, because he could have had, I think, a much larger audience if he would have just stuck to ignoring the Mormon Church, even if secretly he didn't think that was the case.
Mm-hmm. He is speaking to two different audiences and doesn't realize that people like me and Ryan are going to be like, wait a second.
Yeah,
No,
sure.
and the best way to one of the crucial elements to making sure that cult leaders like this don't rise to a prominent position is the work that you're doing and others in exposing what they're all about, exposing these tactics, educating people. So you're doing a huge service to everybody everywhere to try and keep the reins on some of these whack jobs that are trying to gain a following. So thanks for having us on for that reason alone. And for doing what you're doing, because that's the only thing to combat these is to get the truth out there, get an alternative opinion, and the facts that break the brainwashing of people that are entrapped in these doomsday scenarios, these prophet worshiping scenarios that are just everywhere in every country and every culture.
Mhm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But also, it's people like yourself, Ryan and Carah, being willing to speak out, especially where you, Ryan, were so close to him and you were in the inner workings, and you even opened in Carah's video being like, I'm trying to move on from this chapter of my life that I don't want to be associated with, but I feel like I have to because I know too much and I need to say what I have to say. It's people like you being willing to even put their own face on the line and their own reputation on the line. Not that I would judge you for it. I think it's great that you've taken accountability and swapped the script here. I think that without you doing that, people wouldn't be able to see the behind the curtain, and it could all just be hearsay of, oh yeah, whatever, Tim's still doing great things. But you are providing proof, even at your own detriment, of you being like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So we appreciate you and Carah for doing the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of excruciating research and rabbit
It was
holes
fun.
and speaking to
I
all
love
the
it.
people. Yes, it's amazing. So
Thanks,
what else do we have to share here, Carah? Are we at the end, or what do you think?
I think if you want to go on one last tangent, this is its own video in and of itself, that despite all of this, that Tim is like, I am more faithful than ever. I still wear my garments. However, I will be suing the factory that makes these garments. So we can play a clip of Tim
Can we please?
starting to put together this really haphazard legal argument for how he might have to actually sue the church now. And it's, again, another fascinating look into the inner workings, the web of a cult leader. So I can play that now.
To me, and more importantly to the I will get into everything because everybody deserves to know that this is all coming out in ways I can't control anyway.
Okay.
There are civil and criminal conspiracies all over, potential charges, civil, criminal, potential, everywhere in multiple countries. And a lot of it is concentrated in Utah. And what I'm going to tell you as I answer these questions, Troy, is everything I say, I can't lie, guys. I have given this testimony, or will be giving this testimony, under oath in court.
Can you pause it for a second?
Exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, don't be upset if
Is he on double speed? Are we hearing him on double speed, or is he really talking that fast?
I swear he's only on 1.1 speed when I recorded this.
Okay, 1.1, and who is holding the damn camera?
Him.
I'm just like, what's he saying? It's so fast, and the visual. I'm just like,
Yeah.
Are we purposely being hypnotized?
His camera,
What's going
his
on?
phone is losing battery, and he's trying to plug it in and doing a bunch of stuff. But we will recite back what he's talking about when he's done, I guess.
Great, thank you.
Okay. He's wearing some kind of cosplay. He's in Syria as he's recording this.
Yeah, what is he
Ryan and I
wearing?
also,
Okay.
he's just like, oh, I need to always be in my tactical gear. It's his own cosplay of him being a hero.
Sophia says
Okay.
his cat was recording. I think a cat would have done a better job.
That treadmill in the background would have done a better job. Okay.
Okay, go
if
ahead.
the true church of God and true churches and true governments have been infiltrated. The U.S. government also was infiltrated. They tried to usurp the authority of the people. But it was built, read my books, it was built upon godly principles. Good things get infiltrated, and the more good they are, the more they're going to get infiltrated. That's a sign that they're real.
So why would he say that all of this is going to come out in court? There's another clip of him where he's like, all this will come out in, the discovery process. We'll find out what was really happening with this church statement of taking me down. It's going to come out in discovery. I'm going to have to testify in court of these things. I can't lie. It sounds like between him saying that and also later in the interview, he brings up this RICO case, this idea that the church could also be guilty of stopping him because of the denouncement that they put out. Now the church is also implicated in stopping Tim's work of, saving kids and rescuing them from sex trafficking. So the church is in big legal trouble. Like the hot water is a boiling on the church. So he says in one breath, he's like, I forgive everyone. And also I need to sue everyone. Everyone is going to be sued to smithereens and they're going to lose. So don't know what to make of that.
That would be an interesting court to be in with him trying to pull evidence that he's actually saving children and that the church stopped him from doing that. Meanwhile, he has this pile of allegations against him. Anyway.
Right. There's another clip of him talking about how like Argentina, Ryan's better at explaining the Argentina point than I am, but it's like as if sex traffickers are like reading Vice News and like, oh, now there's some undercover guy in our country that now we know about because we're reading Vice News and now we should kick him out of our country. Make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that that in his rant that he points out in here, this, just to put this in like a broader cultural context, he was an early adopter of the QAnon theories, which rose to prominence in the United States. Everybody knows about QAnon. And so this is just another reiteration of satanic ritual abusers of children infiltrating positions of power in government and in his own church. So it's, it's another new branding, new iteration of QAnon that's out there that he's pushing, and that can have the real impact in the lives of real people, cause people to not only just be fearful, but mistrust of government officials, mistrust of leaders, mistrust that can result in taking action, extremist action. So these kind of things, while they're hilarious at the same time, they actually take root in the hearts and minds of real people that start to go down some rabbit holes. It did in QAnon and caused some people to commit violence over that. And so this is dangerous. This is very dangerous and needs to be exposed for what it is, in my opinion, because QAnon did some damage. It's still out there. It's still percolating in society. And there's a lot of people that were able to take that message to heart. And I think there's a lot of people that will take Tim's message to heart that are primed for somebody like this to rise to the ranks, even if they sound crazy to you and me. He doesn't sound crazy to everybody. And so thankfully, Carah has a platform and you have a platform to get some of the opposing the reason out there to oppose some of this stuff.
Yeah. And going along with that, it's like priming the pump. Like before Tim rose up to power, there were other things in the cultural zeitgeist that he could kind of put a foothold in and make his money off of. And what's so interesting is like people have been primed for this moment right now. Like I said, this is a pinnacle turning point for Tim where people who still believe in him after all of this are still coalescing and behind him. And there was a comment underneath the video on Troy Abel's channel where somebody said that the reason why they know what Tim Ballard is saying now is true about, the deep state and all of these conspiracy theories is because at the last conference where I've talked about Rod Meldrum before, Book of Mormon Evidence Conference, that picture that I showed at the beginning was that profile picture that I wanted to show of that Trump running, that profile picture. That was a picture by this woman named Judy Byington. So somebody wrote a comment and said, I know what Tim is saying is true because I went to the last Book of Mormon Evidence Conference where Judy Byington gave us a speech that told us all about how QAnon is infiltrated in the deep state and connected with the Mormon Church. So a Book of Mormon Evidence Conference has a speaker talking about how the deep state is alive and well within the Mormon Church. So there are people within Tim Ballard's hardcore audience, and they're feeling like, well, this is already true because I've already heard people speaking about it. So people have already, the pump has already been primed. And that's where I went down a really fun rabbit hole last night, looking up who this Judy Byington character is, who has her own explanations that are insane, these apocalyptic, outrageous beliefs. But if people are already of that mindset, then they're going to buy Tim's new explanations now. They're going to be like, oh, right. Like Tim couldn't have done anything wrong. This is just that deep state thing that they were all talking about.
Well, I think it's worth noting when you're in a high control group or cult, sometimes it's easier to just take things one step further than to completely dismantle your beliefs.
Sure.
Because it's easier to be like, well, I already believe all this stuff. I know that that's true. believing this one extra thing is not much of a stretch. And so I think even in Tim Ballard's case, right, he just adding on top of things that he's not willing to confront or dismantle himself. And so I feel like even just holding more compassion for those people who do find themselves in those extremist fringe groups of Mormonism, because in some ways I can see how that would feel safer and easier to continue on that path than to completely really disrupt your entire life to say that Mormonism as a whole is just false.
Yeah. Or to say that this person that you've given money to, that you assumed was tackling one of the most horrific things that does exist in the world, the sex trafficking of kids, to think that the money that you spent and the accolades that they've accrued were all for naught, that they were all false and fraudulent, that you could be the person who could be so misled. Like, yeah, that takes a lot of dismantling. I think that's a great point. It's difficult to do.
Well, this was a fantastic update, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Let's read a few of our comments from our people who are here watching the live. We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. We really love it when you guys join in on the chat, especially if you're the replay crew. Leaving those comments helps boost the algorithm so it continues to push the video. Is it me, or was incredibly convenient for the church how Elder Ballard died just when shit hit the fan? That was a little sus. I don't have any evidence to support any sort of conspiracy there, but it is interesting.
Yes. I have a TikTok that I made about that the day that it happened. That was very disrespectful, impersonating the church PR department. Like, who died? Oh, Elder Ballard died. Oh no. Hey everyone, take the next couple of weeks off. Crisis averted. Okay. Because he was no doubt like, was he going to be subpoenaed? Was he going to have to testify against? Like, that was kind of a convenient time for him to peace on out. Like, very interesting timing indeed.
Yeah. I only just arrived, thought he was behind bars. Yeah, that's an update we could save for another day. I think there's a lot going on with that and the trials and the allegations and everything. Anybody else? Thank you guys so much for being here. He's not totally off the hook. Yes. So
he would make he is, but he's not.
Katruna, hit the like button. Thanks, guys. Tell everybody, Carah and Ryan, where they can find you and support you.
Yeah, so Ryan and I just put up an epic video breaking down all of this even further. So please go check that out on my channel. It's under Carah Burrell. I also go by TheNuancehoe sometimes. Subscribing to my channel would be amazing. I'm trying to do similar important work that Shalise and Jonathan do. And so I'm under Carah Burrell or TheNuancehoe on Instagram and TikTok. And sure that you guys will leave those links somewhere down below eventually. And we have a podcast that we work on together, me and Ryan, called Timmy Did What. So we have probably maybe 13 episodes that we've done so far. So if you want to catch up, you can go on our channel. There's a playlist of all kinds of Tim Ballard information there. And I just generally speak about leaving Mormonism and everything that has to do with deconstructing from a cult over on my channel.
Yeah, and in addition to the Timmy Did What podcast on Carah Burrell on YouTube, I have Substack and Instagram that are both at Ryan Fisher, AK78. And then I have some backstory to the Tim Ballard stuff on Nephite Explorer on YouTube, where you can watch past episodes of my show and see where this guy started. 10 years ago, I uploaded those. And so it's interesting to see the evolution of his theology. And now he's attacking the church. So who would have guessed that's where we ended up?
Yes. And Ryan, we didn't have your links ahead of time. So send those immediately when this is over, and guys will upload that into the description so you can find them easily. This was fantastic. Thank you again for putting together the slideshow. Carah, you're amazing. And Ryan, for giving us all that insider information. Let us know next time you have an update and we will be back. Any other final thoughts?
Nope. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. If you want to support the channel, the best way is interacting with the post, watching our videos, even if it's on mute. If you choose maybe not this video, just click play. It shows the algorithm, hey, the core audience loves this video. Let's boost it to more people who are not subscribers. So that's really helpful. Of course, subscribing is another great way to support the channel. We are launching channel memberships within the week, I swear, for real this time. And we have a Patreon at patreon.com/cults to consciousness where you can join over there And definitely check out all the other videos that we have made on Tim Ballard, and go check out Carah's channel. We've linked the videos in her previous video. They should all be there in our description too. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.